Now we should have sound, and I will start again. Just let me know if there are any issues. So I'll start again. So it's been over a month, uh, maybe a month and a half since I've gone live. So let me know if I'm unmuted. Okay, good. Month and a half. So around Christmas, before Christmas, I started having some heart issues, and I I've had heart issues my entire life, but this was pretty. Well, it was more than normal. So I mentioned that on the last stream. And then I got sick with pretty much I'm pretty sure it was COVID. Had all the signs. I lost my smell, I lost my taste. So that set me back. And then I had a tooth problem, had to have tooth surgery and had a tooth removed. And that was like a month. And then just to get back on the horse, it's been a while. I've been doing a lot of Twitter. If people follow me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter all the time, and I just need to make an effort to do YouTube because I know there are people who aren't on Twitter. But like I said before, you guys should go on Twitter. You should go on Twitter. Andrew Spire, a person I have not seen in a long time, haven't spoken with. Andy and I worked on Pawn Stars. Andy worked at the store. I worked on the show. I was on that show for 7 years, and we had a good time. Glad you're around, Andy. Good to see you. So anyway, I was sick, got over it, and now I'm back. And since we left, we now have the official UFO office that Biden signed into law. Um, Nothing new on that. We're waiting. Thank God for Kirsten Gillibrand and Rubio and Congressman Gallego. They were the driving forces in why we have an official UFO office. And I know a lot of people are worried that the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, that office that Lou came from, they're going to squash everything, and they have their own program called or office called the let's see, AOI. I wrote it down, AOI MSG, which is ridiculous, but let's just be patient. I've said that from the beginning. Lou has spoken about it when he was on Coast to Coast, which I do have the transcript done. I have Semivan's transcript done. I'm working on the Eric Weinstein and Hal Puthoff transcript. This week should be something interesting because I always say you should be in this for the long run, but along the way we'll get a lot of surprises. And I think this week there's going to be a surprise. So I don't want to say anything else because it's not my place. Yeah, Terry. It was not a good month, but whatever. I'm over it. Thanks, Jeff. Yes, I'm feeling better. One thing that really annoyed me, somebody's trying to come in, but their devices are not connected. So I don't know how that works. But if you use, I will put out the invite again. If any of you guys want to come on, feel free to ask any questions and interrupt. I will answer any questions any questions that I can. That is the link. If you want to either audio or video, you can come on and ask questions or talk about whatever you want. So Harry Reid left us since I was last here. He passed away. He had pancreatic cancer, and I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer. So I knew as soon as he was diagnosed, his time was limited. But he fought, and he lasted for a while. It was a couple of years. And the thing that really pissed me off was none of the media, when they were talking about his accomplishments, the only media that covered his UFO activism, for lack of a better word, was the local Las Vegas Review Journal, and of course Las Vegas Review Journal, and of course George Knapp. But George Knapp has covered that story for a while, and he was friends with Harry Reid. If you're a journalist covering the death of Harry Reid, even if you have no interest in UFOs, how do you not mention that when you're talking about his accomplishments? It's something he was proud of. He wrote an entire foreword for Skinwalkers in the Pentagon, which is a great read. And these reporters just didn't mention it. I think it's embarrassing for a reporter. And I really want to reach out to some of the local reporters and say, how do you not even mention his interest in UFOs? It's not like it was a passing interest. The guy helped start a program that helped us get to the UFO office that we have now. So annoying and disappointing, definitely disappointing in the media. Yeah, I know Ross has said it, and so has Bryce Zabel. it's just embarrassing if you're a reporter, how you not if you cover the man's life, you could think UFOs are a joke. You should still mention that Harry Reid had a passion for the subject. Thanks to George Knapp back in 89, I think is when Knapp first spoke to Reid in a limousine on the way to the airport, which is now Harry Reid International Airport. And they spoke about Bob Lazar, and that was the beginning of Reid's interest. And then he went to some science advisory board meetings at NIDS that Robert Bigelow was running, and that was the beginning of everything. And then 2007 is when the OSAP program, the idea for the program was begun. So recently, Chris Mellon spoke about the Air Force and how they're still not sharing information. We're not hearing from Air Force pilots. I mean, there's been a few from what we heard, but nothing like the Navy. So then I had somebody say, well, remember, the Air Force Academy is located in a part of Colorado. It's surrounded by evangelical Christians, and those folks are a big, big reason why we're not getting information about UFOs. So I posted some articles on Twitter, and there are certain people higher ups in the Air Force, not just the Air Force, though, the DOD. And Lou has spoken about it. Eric Davis has spoken about it. Hal Puthoff has spoken about it. Joe McMonagle, the remote viewer, has spoken about it. Russell Targ has spoken about it. These folks really make it difficult to study UFOs and anything considered occult like remote viewing. And where was I going with that? So that's a big problem. It's not the only problem. Obviously there's other reasons for the secrecy, but those folks, that leads me to the Collins Elite, which is not according to Eric Davis, it's not an official group. You know, it's loosely organized group of folks who have a common belief that basically what we're dealing with are demons. And I'm just checking some of your comments. There are rumors that Reid possibly recorded something prior to his death, and we may not have heard the last of him on this topic yet. Here's hoping. I did check into that, and I know it was who was it? It was Jazz Shaw who said that. And as far as I know, that is not true. So I mean, there could have been an interview that was recorded that was not, published, audio, video, print. But as far as some big blockbuster that he recorded before he died, don't think so. Hopefully I'm wrong and he's surprised. There's some surprise interview, but I did check, and the answer I got back was, as far as I know, no. So, yeah, we have the evangelical Christians who believe that UFOs are demons, and also remote viewing, which is using your psychic ability to collect information, is dealing with the dark side. So they helped kill that program back in the 90s, and they helped kill OSAP. And then you have the Collins Elite folks, and listening to Nick Redfern, who wrote a book about the Collins Elite. I think it was 2011 or 2010. It was called Final Events. And Redfern, who I really haven't read, because it seems like he puts out a book every week. I'm like, and I have a source who said, listen, you want to know what's going on, read Diana Pasulka, American Cosmic, which everybody should read. Because Pasulka basically confirmed, which I already knew and a lot of people knew, but Pasulka about a week ago, she wrote American Cosmic, and she said that James, the character in that book, is Gary Nolan. So when you read that book, you'll see that he's an experiencer. So that was nice to see that she came out, and Gary joked about it because I don't think he really cares. He's an experiencer, and he's a top-notch scientist at Stanford, and that's a big deal. I don't think enough people have put two and two together. If you're an experiencer, to see somebody like that, he didn't come out, but I mean, basically, that's him. That's a pretty big deal, because people are always like, oh, the people who see UFOs and are abducted, they live in the middle of nowhere. It's some farmer. Well, no, you have a top-rated, top-notch scientist at Stanford University. And it talks in the book about his family being experiencers. So that's a really big deal. And hopefully the media will pick up on it. I don't know if he'll talk about that to media members, but it's in the book, and it was nice to see her put it out there, and he did not deny it. He just joked around with it, made some comments on Twitter. Hi, Joe. Great info that you've been putting out there. Also, I'm liking the Ross Coulter has been doing an amazing job. He has the guts to ask the tough questions and respect to get an answer. Ross was one of my sources back then, 2020, that I put. I'm trying to think of the right wording. I would ask Ross, "Hey, I'm working on the Wilson Davis mega blog," and I would throw something at Ross. What do you think about that? So he was a really valuable resource for me back then. And he's been really great about sharing information to help me out. So back to what I was saying. So the Collins Elite. I started listening to interviews with Redfern, and he's basically saying the Collins Elite believe that these are demons. And originally he said he spoke to, I think, 7 members of the Collins Elite. One of them was a senior member, allegedly. I don't know how you confirm that, because they're not a real organization like in the government. It's loosely organized, not official. And one of your transcripts, recent Coast to Coast interview, Lou, you mentioned a few names who've been problematic to the release of UAP info. Yeah, I don't know. I put that out there. I don't want to dox people. I don't want that. I am confident with those names. I don't know anything about them. Marcel Lettre was mentioned in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, but him and the other person were allegedly instrumental in killing the OSAP program. They played a large role in that. So I don't know what to do with that information. It's like, what are we going to do? I mean, okay. I mean, yeah, their name is out there, but it's not like we should do anything. I'm really careful. I know recently when George Knapp interviewed Lou and they mentioned, I think it was Harry Reid. It's like, that's the guy that's, not too thrilled with Lou. I think it was, I don't know if it was Lou Superior. But I don't want to go on like a witch hunt against these folks, but I don't know how much influence they still wield as far as keeping this information secret. I don't, and I was talking with Merrick. I forget Merrick's last name, but he writes a lot of articles for The Hill, a lot of op-eds. If you've seen recently, he's done a great job. But he's like, there's no government. He doesn't think there's a government-wide cover-up. And I agree. The people who know the information, it's not the entire government or the majority of the government. It's pockets within the government, certain stovepipes, certain people in special access programs. I don't know how much. I think you have levels. You have people who know, yes, there are UFO videos that are unbelievable, not just our country. And I heard that. I mean, we already have heard that from Lou too. And then Hal Puthoff said to Eric Weinstein, he's like, as good as you would expect or hope, there are videos out there. But then you have another level with the alleged crash retrieval program and other data, which is stored in, as far as I know, on unacknowledged special access programs. And Eric Davis has said the amount of people who have access to those programs is so tiny. So it's a very small amount of people who have that information. And Letcher is now the VP of Lockheed. I did not know that. And I don't know if Lockheed is the one that has the alleged crash retrieval program. I don't know. Eric Davis has said no. If you read my mega blog, he said no, Lockheed is not. But I don't know. And I really don't get wrapped up. People are like, you should look at this company. It's not going to be up to us to get that information out. I don't know if they'll ever, like, say Congress does find out that we have a crash retrieval program. Eric Davis gave them information, according to Chris Mellon, because Chris Mellon was on Capitol Hill when Eric Davis gave briefings to the, I'm going to take a break just to get a drink. Hold on a second. Eric Davis, 2019, gave a couple of classified briefings, he said, to the Senate Select Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee and the DOD agency, which was reported in the New York Times. And Christopher Mellon said he was there for those briefings, and he said Eric gave them enough information where they can go check. So let them go check whether or not, if they do, let's say they find it. First of all, do they have access? If they're not on the bigot list, they're not going to have access. But if they do get access, I don't think they're going to just say, by the way, Americans in the world, we just found the craft from Roswell, or we found the craft from the Trinity crash in 45. I don't think that's going to happen. But, Lou said, if you're looking for bodies, and I don't know if he said crash retrieval and bodies, but he said, if you're looking for bodies and that information to come out now, he goes, you better just go find a hobby, because that's not happening right now. He said, come back in 5 years, check back with us in 5 years. Now, if we get information about bodies in 5 years, I'll be pretty happy, because I've been at this for such a long time. 5 years is nothing to me. I don't see anything happening, full disclosure, anytime soon. There are people that disagree with me, but as I say, patience. I'm trying to see. Yes, Peter. Hello to you too. So I don't expect, I know people want public hearings in Congress. Somebody told me privately they don't think public hearings are coming this year. I hope that's wrong, but that's just what I heard. Yeah, I agree, Troy. I mean, 5 years, if we can get it, if you have patience, you see 5 years, people are like, 5 years, but stuff will happen along the way. It's not like we're not going to get information. Information's going to come out this year. The question is how much. I don't think it's going to be what everybody, not everybody, but some people think we're having this imminent disclosure. And obviously anything can change at any time, especially with the phenomenon. In 2019, those unknown objects that, swarmed the Navy ships out on the West Coast, that could happen again. That was only 2 years ago. So, and no, I don't think that was Russia and China. Some people are saying, like the people I've spoken to, they're like, no, even the higher ups don't know what those objects were. So those are a true mystery. And the difference between bodies and crash retrieval wreckage, I would think we would get both at the same time if we do get it in my lifetime. So yeah, and yeah, I'm not going to be. I think we should give amnesty for people for keeping the secret. And I've said before, though, if somebody committed violence or intimidation, violence, we have to look at each case on a case by case basis. I don't know if violence has been committed to keep the secret. I know we hear that, but specific cases I don't know about. Somebody pointed it out to me, and it's like, you always hear those stories, but do we have any specifics? Yeah, Bigelow said it. Bigelow said it's right under our noses, but I'm not really sure what that means. I mean, that could mean a lot of things. I mean, he's had poltergeist-like activity in his home with his him and his late wife had it. And he said he didn't realize it would last as long as it has. And Ramirez calls it a scheduled dissemination of information instead of disclosure. Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth on that. Eric Davis says, no, that's not what's going on. He's like, and he says that if anything, the phenomenon drives it, meaning when you have events like 2019, 2015 on the East Coast, 2019 was the West Coast. That's when you start seeing people saying, what's going on here? We need to look into this. And that's what's driving it. Not that it's some control. He's not talking about a control mechanism. He's just talking about these events happen and they get reported, and some of the 2004, those guys all spoke about their incident once it came out, the Tic Tac incident. So as far as a scheduled dissemination of information, like I said, Eric Davis in his interview with Stephen Greenstreet said, it was in his interview with Alejandro Rojas, 2019. He said, no, it's a big conspiracy that people think there's this group just letting this out slowly. But, I could be wrong. He could be wrong. I don't think so, but, I don't know. But as long as the information keeps coming out, I don't care. As Lou said at one point, he says, people think it's some psyop. He's like, well, let's say it is a psyop. You're getting the information. So do you really care? Of course, it depends on what kind of psyop we're talking about and what the end game is. But yeah, we're getting information for the first time since I got into this. and oh, that's right. I have to explain how I got into the subject. I promised a couple of people. Um, I thought we would have. I got into this 96 or so, and I thought we would have disclosure by 2000. So for me to see what's going on now is just amazing. Because there was a lull for a long time where it was just, new books were coming out, nothing major, and I was getting bored. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to pay attention as much as I have in the past. And then 2017 happened, and then that changed. I could see many reasons for not disclosing to the public. Yeah, I can't see that not playing a role, especially if they're not extraterrestrial. And people are like, well, that would be a big story. I think they would have to think twice about letting that information out. But what if they're interdimensional beings that some people are going to say they're demons? I think they'd be a little hesitant to say, yeah, they can move among us, and we can't really see them because they operate in the electromagnetic spectrum that we really can't see unless we have instruments, and they sometimes can influence us. That's the story with Paul Eno, who somebody introduced me to his works, and he said in 1973, longtime paranormal investigator. He said in 1973 he was working with 7 exorcist folks. They were supposedly possessed, and he was working with a priest. And 5 of the 7 people who were allegedly possessed had had UFO encounters. So there was some sort of connection. I don't know if the phenomenon is connected to that, or maybe this is something separate that was mimicking UFO sightings. I don't know, but there's some sort of connection. And whether or not it's one intelligence here or a whole bunch of different ones, time travelers, ET, interdimensional, I don't know. I go back and forth. I've heard different things from different people. Most folks say, we don't know. We just don't know. I think they know what some of them look like, but that doesn't tell you where they are. It doesn't tell you what they are. I don't know how you would figure that out unless we have data that shows them coming from way out in deep space. And as far as I know, I read it was a message board by somebody who has had clearances, and they said, yeah, that data doesn't exist as far as what I've seen, but maybe it's locked up in some special access program. They didn't say special access program. They said that data could exist that shows they're coming from another planet, but I have not seen it. Just going through some of your comments. The Aurora. I remember the Aurora hearing about it. That mentions some folks experience a hitchhiker effects after merely reading Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. I have not. Where did he say that? I did not see that. Um, I mean, I was working on Skinwalker. No, as far as I have not really had. You start getting paranoid. You read some of these cases where people drove by a haunted location, and then they said they had some hitchhikers type stuff come home with them. But me personally, no. I had one experience here, like a ball of light went outside, but I don't think I was working on anything Skinwalker related at the time. Yeah, I have not heard that as far as reading the book. And if you heard Knapp say that, let me know where it is. Um, yeah, we still don't know what he was told. DeLong was told something, when he was in the early days, he was meeting with these intel folks, and they said something to him that caused him to lose street. He wasn't able to sleep for 3 days. Um, I don't know. I don't know if you saw my Twitter today. Ted Rowe, who works with NARCAP, he was one of the original members, founding members. He had a really, I have to get him on here because he had an amazing sighting. The guy is really credible, up close, tic tac like object, which was you could see into it. 2 other witnesses in the car during the day. I think it was on a highway, and then he told Richard Haynes, who was a guy who spent his life trying to educate people about UFOs and flight safety with especially with commercial airliners. And Haynes really didn't want anything to do with it. That's a story that really has not been told enough. He was on Erica Luke's show talking about that. I need to listen to the rest of his interview, which I linked to today. Not mentioned in her interview, but unfortunately I can't remember which one. I'll ask him. I haven't heard that, but I will ask. I'm trying to, let's see, there we go. Dodi. No, I don't get asked about Dodi a lot, but if I post something on Dodi, I get a lot of flack. I met him at the mega conference in Laughlin in June. Nice guy. Everybody who meets him likes him. Very likable. He says he was just following orders with, um, of course, I'm gonna, oh, Benowitz, Paul Benowitz, where for people who don't know the story, Paul Benowitz supposedly saw something from his apartment using his binoculars, I think, at Kirkland Air Force Base. And then I guess the story that Dodi says is he, Benowitz saw something that the government, it was a government secret program he had stumbled upon. So they had to confuse him by telling him, no, that's UFO stuff, Paul. Anyway, the end story is kind of lost his mind a little bit and then he died. He did not commit suicide. I know Christopher Mellon has talked about it twice and mentioned how Benowitz committed suicide, but he did not. Also, Richard Doty he openly said he fed Linda Moulton House some BS. He gave her, I'm not sure if he ever said the document he gave her was BS. The document that Linda Moulton House spoken about forever, where it says the question about, he says it said that the intelligence came here and they basically upgraded already evolving primates on this planet. In other words, genetically engineered us. That was the big takeaway from her, what she was able to read, not take any notes, no pictures. Dodi has some interesting information. It's really hard for me to tell if some of the information is not true, because some of it is really far out there, talking about guys going, military guys going to this mountain in Nevada and then underground and seeing aliens in this base, and another one where these people were killed by tall whites or Nordics. They basically ripped this one guy apart. I mean, it's like, I'm open-minded, but it's just a story. Like most of ufology, it's a story, and I've only heard it from him, so it's hard to judge. So I don't know. I know Hal Puthoff worked with him for a while at Earth Tech, and Puthoff had good things to say about him, and he said that some of the stuff Dodi gave them checked out, some of it didn't. So undecided. Nice guy though. Fun guy to talk to. I'm trying to. There we go. I just recently watched an interview where he talked about being present at an abduction, and it's pretty wild. Peter, thank you very much. I will get to you in a second. An abduction and a military abduction, a MyLab, which he's spoken about. I don't know if he said MyLab, but he said military was faking some abductions. And I wrote to him and he's like, I didn't say they faked all. It was a very small part of what is going on. He thinks real abductions are going on. I think in his interview with Stephen Greer's where he mentioned that, and then Greer said, "Oh, look, he said it's all military," and Doty's like, "Nope, I didn't say that. I was taken," and I went back and watched it. Greer has his theories, so he used that for one of his documentaries. I'm not so quick to judge anyone in the field, especially being under the impression any one person does not have the full picture. Yeah, I'm the same way. I definitely do not have. I have opinions and speculation. Everything else, the most I'll say is I believe something, and I say this all the time. Something is interacting with human beings and has been for a very long time. That's my belief. Everything else is speculation. And that's Peter. Peter, thank you very much. And I can't read. I don't have a translator on here, so I don't know what you said. But thank you. I'll have to look it up later when I could pull that and put it into a translator. I was on a UFO's Brother episode I watched. He talked to them about a story he said he hadn't told anyone before, so I'm 50-50. Yeah, it's really hard because you listen to him and you sit down and you talk, and it was after the conference. Most of his stories were during the conference. Afterwards, we talk about all different things in ufology. It was great. That was a group. It was Richard Dolan, me, Jimmy Church before he blocked me again. Dodi and Jordan Maxwell was there. Jordan Maxwell's been around forever. So back to what I was talking about, the Collins Elite. So Redfern said when they first got together, they were pretty open-minded about various theories. even if UFOs were something negative, they didn't just jump to the demons and angels. The bad ones are demons, the good ones are angels. They did supposedly do they do have that belief, but early on they were more open. Like if you look at Paul Eno and he talks about exorcisms, he doesn't think that they're demons who are possessing these people. He thinks they're just parasites. I think he says there's, I don't know if it's 7, 8, or 9 different types. And I'm open to that. It's like I don't think that's the entire answer, but it could be. Could be like, and he says the Collins Elite believe that the demons are pretending to be extraterrestrials trying to deceive us. And if that's true, and he's not the only one, they're not the only folks that believe that. I think Ray Boucher, who is the one who had a meeting with two of these guys back, I don't know if it was 1991. I don't know if they were Collins Elite members or DOD. I think they were DOD folks, but Boucher was on a show talking, and Boucher is one of the people I was told by one of my sources to read. Person said Pasulka, Valet, Boucher, and Redfern was the last thing. And the person said, "Yeah, I know Redfern seems to put out a book every week, but he has done some good work." And Final Events seems like a good book. I have it. I've only listened to interviews with Redfern. I haven't read the book yet. Yeah, Pasulka has spoken about, remember, it's not really an official name. They don't have the CE on their jacket. We are members of the Collins Elite. But those folks are there. I have no doubt. My favorite story is Joe McMonagle, though. He goes, McMonagle said that they had to from time to time, they had to go and show their remote viewing skills to get more funding each year. But during one of these meetings, he met somebody and the guy said, "You're doing the work of the devil." He's like, "Oh, okay." And then a couple of minutes later, he meets another guy. I think it was at the same meeting or get together. And the guy goes, "You're doing the work of God." So it's like, it's really hard to win with that. Whatever is going on, I am of the belief we need to study this. I respect the folks if they really think it's demonic and they want to keep us from studying it, because studying it opens that doorway and lets them in if you show a belief in them. I think that's what Redfern says. I respect that, but I respect the passion they have and they want to save the world. But I think we need to study this and figure it out, because we don't know what it is. At least I don't. As far as I know, I don't know anybody that does. They believe they figured it out. Redfern said they stopped. They said this is it. This is what we believe. So there's no changing their mind at this point. Gary Nolan has said, maybe it's the way this intelligence is communicating with us through technology. He kind of hinted at, the beings, maybe just, that's what they're not really beings, but that's the way to represent themselves so we can actually understand, oh yeah, here's a being in front of me. Maybe they don't have any form whatsoever. Maybe it's, and I don't know if it's, you hear stories about benevolent, malevolent, neutral. If it's just one intelligence, it's all over the place, because, you have the trickster, stuff that makes absolutely no sense. I mean, you have a story where some guy, I forget what year it was, but these human looking beings came down and gave him pancakes, just ridiculous stuff like that. George Knapp talks about, the Uinta Basin. They saw smoking dog faced people in trench coats. Ridiculous. But witnesses are reporting that. And, people are like, why do you even talk about that? I'm like, well, because there are stories like that, just like the bipedal wolf in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. 3 people saw it: the wife, the son, and then the son's kid, friend. So it's like, and people make fun of that bipedal wolf story, but just another one of those things. You're like, it sounds ridiculous, but it was reported by multiple people. Yeah, on the Eric Weinstein and Hal Puthoff interview, they talk about, and The Drive did a great article on the research that was done in the 50s in anti-gravity. And it's funny, Hal Puthoff said, yeah, either they just totally failed or they succeeded it went black. And that's why I have a friend, Will Miller, who says he believes we have cracked gravity and we have a craft that can go any place, anytime in the universe. So, you hear that, and then other people are like, that's ridiculous. We have not cracked gravity. We've not made any progress. Eric Davis talks about the crash retrieval program. They have not made any progress. Of course, it's possible there's another program that made progress. I don't know. I mean, and it's really hard because Will is not just some he's just not some guy. Will Miller, who folks who don't know who he is, he's in my mega blog. He's somebody that Leslie Kane called a true insider, and he briefed people in the Pentagon on what he knew. He briefed Admiral Wilson. He briefed the next director of the DIA, Patrick Hughes. So yeah, have we cracked gravity? Have we not? Michael Vai, who I've had on, he believes we've cracked gravity. So, it's a passionate subject that people react to either way. Have you been following what's been going on with I don't know about the Blind Frog Ranch. I know it's close. Yeah, I know Brandon Fugel said it was not very far away the other day. I need to look up. I need to look it up. Another thing to look up. Underground findings and similar to Skinwalker. And there's other places like Sedona and Yakima, Washington, which are mentioned in Hunt for the Skinwalker, Dulce, New Mexico, but not the extreme stories you hear about Dulce. I think Dulce is where the guy who was supposedly had got into a firefight with aliens. What was his name? I forget his name. Phil Schneider. And then, but the stories about Dulce are similar to Skinwalker. So it seems like there are certain places where that happens. I don't know if there's a portal. I don't know. Also, there's a Native American connection. Very close to Native American sites, if not on Native American ground. I would like to interview Ray. I tried last year. He was a little out of it, under the weather. So I need to try again. He's the one that brought up another theory about whatever is going, and it goes along with the Collins elite folks believe. He said, whatever is around the nuclear weapons and shutting them off and turning them on wants us to believe that they're extraterrestrial. This is a theory. I don't know if he believes this, but way to deceive us. So deception. So we're looking over into the sky. Where are the extraterrestrials? Meanwhile, it's something on this planet. So it, keep us one step behind what it actually is. That's the theory. The bizarre nature of those stories fits with the psychological consciousness connection. Slide 9. Yeah, I mean, maybe if they're able to manipulate our perceptions, I would say it's not really a bipedal wolf. It's just something they projected into their consciousness. But the tree out back, as an example, the tree out back of that, I think it was the wife of Axelrod in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, and they went out the next day or later that day because it happened. I think it happened during the day. And they found scratch marks into the tree, so it's physical. But as Gary Nolan has spoken about, Jacques Vallée, John Keel, it may be an intelligence that has technology so advanced that it can actually, instead of CGI where it's not physical, and it actually can become physical. So I don't know. Total speculation. I want to tell the story before I forget of how I got into this. So just hold off questions for now. So how I got into this. When I was younger, I was 7 years old. My sister, and she doesn't remember this, she took me to see a docudrama about Bigfoot in the theater. And I remember the opening feature was a UFO documentary, which I don't know which one it was. But I remember being fascinated and scared because the docudrama was shot like a movie, half documentary, half scripted. So that was my first, I think, introduction to something paranormal or supernatural or occult or something. Just, I don't know what I would have called it as a kid. And then along the way, I would watch In Search Of, which was Leonard Nimoy, and I loved it. That famous Patterson Gimlin film with the Bigfoot creature walking and turning around. Love that film. And then 77 is when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind in the theater. But I was not into UFOs, though. I liked the movie. And I didn't really, at the time, maybe I had encyclopedias. I could have looked up the subject, but I didn't know there was I didn't know there was books on it. I'm 12 years old. I have a great picture of me playing drums with the Close Encounters T-shirt on, which I can't find. Had the big mothership on the front, but I didn't have really a really strong interest in anything paranormal until I'm trying to think. I did have this was like eighth or ninth grade. I had a dream where the girl I had a huge crush on. In my dream, her mother died and she was at the hospital, and I saw her at the hospital, and I asked my mom in the dream, "Hey, her mom just died. Can she come stay with us?" It was kind of like a selfish way. I'm like, "Oh, I get to hang out with her. Now her mother died and now she needs somewhere to stay. She could come stay with us." So this is my dream in ninth or 10th grade. And then the next day I go into school. I didn't know her mom was sick. Anyway, her mom died. I dreamt her mom died. The next day I go in. She tells us her mom died, or the 2 days later. So that's like a premonition dream, or I'm trying to think of the word of what it is, but I didn't really think of anything at the time. I didn't connect it to something paranormal. I probably thought it was just no big deal. It's funny. A couple of years ago, I reached out to her. So that was like, I'd say 1980, 81. So like 35 years later, I don't know how many, 90, 2000, almost 40 years later, I reached out to her on Facebook, found her, told her the story. And I'm like, did I remember these details right? Your mom had cancer, right? You told us after I asked you if your mom died. I told her the whole thing. And we got to talk on the phone. And then it turns out that her son lived in Vegas and worked with the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team, which I was working. I got to meet him that night. Really weird. Had that experience. And then I'd say 86 or so, 87, might have been 82 or 83. And I was probably like 18 years old. My cousin told me about astral projection. Make a long story short, I went to the bookstore, got a book, read it, tried it, nothing happened. Um, Make a long story short, 96, I met my first wife, and she mentioned how her aunt had this being show up, and when she was falling asleep in a chair, and I'm like, "What did the being look like?" She's like, "On the cover of that book, that book about abductions. That's what it looked like." I'm like, "What book?" She's like, "I think it's called Communion." So I bought the book, read it, got too scared because I didn't realize it was a scary book about abductions, and I was freaked out. This was 96. Stopped reading it, put it down. I'm like, I'm not going to read this. I don't want to read this. I woke up that night or the next night on the couch. I was sleeping on the couch and I couldn't move. So I was frozen. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to get abducted. The aliens are coming. So I couldn't move, but I struggled out of it. And then I'm like, you know what? The next day, I'm like, I'm going to finish reading that book. And then I read it. And I'm like, oh, this is really great. This is about metaphysical subjects I had never heard about. And that sent me down the metaphysical rabbit hole. I read channeled books. I read so many different books on UFOs. I thought disclosure was coming in 2000. I believed everything I read. I had no discernment. So that's how I got into this. And then I started my own newsletter around, I'm trying to think if it was 97, 98. Open Mind News was my newsletter. That didn't work out. And then got back into television. I actually quit my job. I was working a job at the city of Tampa Television to work on the newsletter full time. Didn't focus enough, didn't pursue it enough. So I had to get back into television. And then, I stayed in UFO updates. That list was great back then. Books, and then nothing strong until 2017 and DeLong. And DeLong is a big reason why that happened. So that's how I got into this. Let's see. I don't know. A hologram with mass. I don't know. I know Kit Green has mentioned holograms, but I think he was thinking more along the lines of black technology. But I mean, it's only a theory, but I think it, at least one intelligence here can. Obviously, I can't explain the science, but basically, it can create whatever it wants. It's kind of like the holodeck, except it can become physical and enter into our world. But you know that how do you explain that to the general population? Like I said, ET's one thing. They're here to collect resources, and maybe humans are one of the resources that would go over well. But then you say, no, they're not ET. They're just they're kind of like non-physical. They're on this planet and really can't see them, but they also can create whatever they want. So UFOs, the craft, they create that. They have really super duper advanced tech. It looks like magic, as Arthur C. Clarke said. Any advanced technology, I forget the quote, will look like magic. Um, I don't know about gallium embedded in rocks in the water. Gallium wasn't smelted. Yeah, I don't know about that. I will try to remember to Google it. Um, I think as time goes on, there's going to be so many discoveries like this doesn't make any sense. Just like Michael Cremo, some of the archaeological finds that people have, they date them to like 20,000, whatever. They date them to some ridiculous date, and then mainstream archaeologists come in and say, nope, that's impossible. So sorry, but I think it takes a long time. I think the quote, I don't know who said it, science changes one funeral at a time. So it's the younger people that are coming in and more open-minded. The Legend of Bogey Creek is the movie. I think there was another one too. You can watch it on YouTube. And I loved that movie, even though it scared me. Yeah, precognitive dream. That's what I had. And I had another dream like that when I was working in a hospital with dying veterans who were in palliative care, which means they're dying. They know they're dying. They have limited time. So I would just spend time with these guys. And one of the guys, he had emphysema, and some days good, some days bad. He couldn't breathe. He would just wave me off. He didn't want to talk. One day I go in that night before, I had a dream that he died. And I go in, and he was not. There was no like warning that he was about. Usually, you have some sort of warning, not always, but so I had no warning whatsoever that he was taking any downturn or anything like that. I'd been there 2 days before. So I have the dream he dies. I go in, nurse stops me before I go in. She's like, I need to talk to you. I'm like, Frank died, right? She's like, how did you know? I'm like, had a dream about it last night. So yeah, and I go into the room. I go, can I go into his room? She's like, yeah, go ahead. And I go into the room, and his bed was empty, but the bed next to him, there was always two beds, had like a form in it. I'm like, what the hell? They didn't take his body out? And then the sheets are covered up. The form is covered, and all of a sudden the sheets come off, and it's a new person who had just been checked into that room, and it scared the hell out of me. And they're like, hello. I'm like, oh, hi. So yeah, that was another precognitive dream. And I've had other ones like that, not about death. Those two death ones stood out. And there are some people that think, well, that's the phenomenon feeding you those dreams. There's a connection. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's all connected. Peter says, I did not think about UFOs before 2014. Man, so that's recent. My dad passed, and in no time, my wife saw a classic UFO. I say a big orb in the house. I saw a big orb in the house and other stuff. The only orb I've seen was out back, about 15 feet away from this door during dusk. I think Kenneth Arnold had orbs in his house. His daughter or his sister, I think, spoke about that. They write about that in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. There are people that have gotten into this even in the last couple of years. It's definitely growing with interest. It's not something you go on the street and you're going to find, throw a rock and you're like, oh, that person's now into UFOs. I don't think it's that, that widespread, but it's definitely increasing. My Twitter following is increasing, but I don't know if it's because of that or just because normally if you get a lot of followers, people see it's like exponential growth. People see that you have 10,000 followers. Are like, oh, that person must know what they're talking about. So they follow you, and it builds and builds and builds. Or we live in a crappy simulation with bugs. Can't rule it out. Tom, my big toe, my big theory, my big theory of everything. Tom Campbell, physicist, talks about how this is all a simulation. Basically, World of Warcraft. That's where we're living in something like that. Could be, The question I have, if that's the case, it's useless to us unless we could somehow change the program, which would be great. Loved In Search of Two, Leonard Nimoy's voice, that and Twilight Zone. I wasn't a huge Twilight Zone fan. I did watch it, but In Search of I watched all the time. The over was the size of a tennis. I guess you're talking about the orb. The orb was the size of a tennis ball, gray and strings inside. That's interesting. What I saw was just dull white. It was dull white. I'd say about that big, and it went so fast. It was not an animal. I don't know what it was. Let's see. Back to the Collins Elite. I'm trying to think what else they said. Oh, basically, they he, the Collins Elite, according to Redfern, they believe that they feed that these beings, these demons, are feeding off of our negative emotions and they're harvesting our souls. Um, Paul Eno, who works with people who have negative attachments, I guess you would call it. He teaches them, gotta don't be fearful, don't be angry, put out a positive emotion when you encounter them, and he says it works. He says the possession, the exorcisms did not work. It's almost like they just would feed off of that. It didn't work with those folks, but he says the methods he uses nowadays, where he doesn't think they're demons. He thinks positive thoughts, and DeLong has said that love is like a nuclear missile to the heart of the UFO. I wish people would ask some of the follow-ups, because when DeLong is on, the people who interview him have no idea of what he said in the past. And the Collins Elite think Earth is a farm. Um, the first person I think who ever said the theory that Earth is a farm was Charles Fort. And I pulled up a quote from his book, which is on my Twitter. I need to go through my Twitter more often on here, because right now it would take me probably all day to go back to when I was on last, compare and just go through all my tweets. There's some really good stuff on there. A lot of audio. I try to do a lot of audio too. I'll try to pull quotes from books that I think jump out as interesting. And you've seen, if you've been on UFO Twitter the last couple of weeks, there are people that have lost patience. They're starting to say this is a psyop, and they're questioning Lou. There was a documentary which I did not spend any time with, that is now not available on YouTube, which, because the person took pieces from shows without asking, so there's a copyright strike against them. They'll probably be put up, but it's just like, if you think Lou is part of a psyop and some evil guy at this point, I think you're just lost. There are people that think that. They think Lou, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, Bigelow, they're all part of the problem. It's just, to me, it's just horrible analysis. Just like people who look at the West Coast events with the drones. I'm going to collect everything that Jeremy Corbell has said and Knapp has said about that, because he said a lot that may clear up some things. It's not Jeremy that called those pyramid objects on the West Coast. I know a lot of people think it was Boca, out of focus, but that made it into the UAP task force. And I would love to know more about 2019, and I think we will find out more through Jeremy, and he's spoken about that, how he has a lot more. There are people. Let me just go through some comments. Logan, good to see you. I know you've been with me on Twitter for a while. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. My current efforts are looking for a job. No luck yet. Pat Price told Ingle Swan the U.S. government works with ETs. Ingle told him not to talk about it. I mean, I know Pat Price was amazing. Pat Price was incredible. He was better than Ingo Swan. There was a rivalry. I think it was a rivalry between a lot of those guys. I know Pat Price remote viewed ET bases, but without getting feedback to confirm that there were ETs in the base. I mean, it's interesting, and I've heard that the government was urged by somebody who was involved to say, go look, confirm or deny, go look. And they didn't do it. Supposedly didn't do it. Joe, have you read any of Gene Radin's work? Yeah, his first book, The Conscious Universe. And the guy is so underrated. And he works with one of my favorite researchers, William Bankston, who does the healing method on mice with cancer. and they're trying to record in the room when they're doing these healing sessions. They're trying to record everything they can. I don't know what instruments they're using, but they're having some success. So they can play the recording, and instead of having the healers, they can just play the recording. And which obviously, if they can scale it up and it works, you can just he wants to give it away for free. I have no doubt that humans in his experiments are healing mice of cancer, mammary cancer. The mice live to 27 days maximum. In his experiments, they're living 80% of the mice are living their full lifespan of 2 years. So done in university labs, peer-reviewed reports. It's real basic. And he's like, if you have a problem with any of my studies, and you think there's a problem and something's wrong and the data is inaccurate, tell me about it. I mean, I want to interview him too. His books are great, especially the one he reads. I forget what it's called, The Energy Cure. People need to be open-minded about everything. Yeah, I mean, one thing that does bother me today, there was somebody saying they know that this is going to happen by 2025 and this is going to happen by 2028, and the Galactic Federation, which is made up of 8 different species. It's like it's such a bad thing when, especially new people. I mean, I don't want to stop people from saying that, but they put it on one of my tweets. I'm like, I have to respond to that because there are people like, really, that's interesting. You think that? What about the reptilians? And I'm like, anytime anybody is so sure of themselves, just run away. It's just, and I know that they believe the information they're getting is accurate, but as we know, channeling is so contradictory and predictions come and go. And if there really are beings feeding them information, they're feeding me either they're lying to them, feeding them bad information, or the interpretation is off, one or the other. So you just cannot rely on channeled information. It's interesting. I love the raw material, interesting to read. I don't know if any of it's true. I think Courtney Brown said he thinks it's just a whole bunch of gobbledygook meant to just distract us. Because if you read some of the raw material, it's like, what the hell are they saying? It's like in a different language. SSP stories. Yeah, I mean, you have this secret space program as a basic story, but then you have people who claim, I don't know if it's really, if you really combine the two, then you have the super soldiers and the ones who say they went to Mars. Secret space program is one thing if we have some technology, and you know, I know Dolan has spoken about that and he believes that. I don't know. But the other stuff with the guys who have gone to Mars, man, I would love for it to be true. If we have some sort of portal, you could jump in and be on Mars, but I don't think that's the case. You have Randy Kramer, you have Basiago, you have other folks. There's like a long list. Corey Good, I think, right? I never paid attention to Corey Good from day one. I just thought he was bogus. Best. Let's see. Best remote viewing books. First remote viewing book I read was Jim Schnabel, called Remote Viewers. It's a paperback. Such a great read, entertaining. Um, he also it's a great place to start. I also read that, but he also made a documentary called The Real X Files, which is on YouTube. Good documentary. He actually closes it with he does a remote viewing session with Ingo Swann as his monitor, and he has a great session. Schnabel does. So that book is a good one. Then I think the first one I ever read was Courtney Brown, Cosmic Voyage, which I do not recommend. I read David Morehouse, Psychic Warrior. Don't recommend, just because the guys in the program were like, yeah, Morehouse took a lot of our stories and embellished and put them in his book. Doesn't mean he can't teach remote viewing. Doesn't mean he doesn't have abilities, but that book, no. Joe McMonagle, anything by Joe McMonagle except The Time Machine. He wrote a book called The Time Machine where he made all these future predictions, and he's like, yeah, it didn't work out. I tried. Predictions for the most part, not accurate. But any of his other books, Mind Trek was one of the first, I think the first book I read from him. I have not read all of his books. Mind Trek, which you can find online as a PDF for free. I pulled a quote from that the other day when he was talking about how in his 10th year of remote viewing, he started seeing things out of the corner of his eyes. And then after a while, he was actually able to look up at them, almost like shadow type beings. That's some of the tweets I need to pull up so I can read from them. It's really good, interesting stuff. Saw a little, like a foot high little lizard in his house just running, and the cat went after it. So, it's like, if you believe the way he told the story, and then yeah, there was something there. And nothing ever went negative. Nothing ever happened negative with any of that. He also talks about a remote viewing a UFO sighting in the middle of the session. He says his dead father showed up, but he's like, "You're not my dead father," because the way that the father was acting was not the way his father would act. He's like, "Sorry, this is all nonsense," and the thing just blinked out. So they were trying to trick him for whatever reason. They were trying to get him out of there, telling him, "You don't belong here." Because then you hear stories about people who have close encounters earlier in the day. They'll see their dead relatives or part of the close encounter. Is it really their dead relative? And I'm skeptical. People get upset by that, but it's like, eh, if they can take any form they want, if that's true, all bets are off, I would think. Who am I talking about with what? I kind of lost. The English hacker, Gary McKinnon. I think I just started following him. I know he said that he found. Yeah, I mean, I'm open. So maybe that, we do have guys that went to space, and I need to look more into McKinnon stuff. I know the story and I remember when it first happened, but yeah, I would love, I know it's not, I would love for more people to hack into stuff, find it. I do support whistleblowers as long as they're not giving information that's going to get us screwed over in some sort of battle. Or anything other than that, I support it. I mean, I love that guys were leaking to Corbell. Um, I hope we get more of that. That hasn't hurt us whatsoever, and they did investigate and try to find out who was leaking. As far as I know, they did not find them. Haven't heard anything, but I know that investigation 100%. I know it took place. Penetration. I have a great source on penetration, which remind me. I have a message about penetration, what parts you should believe, what parts you should take with a grain of salt. Of course, that's just this person's opinion. There are other people who think the entire book is quality, but the person I spoke with did not believe that. So remind me, and I will try to pull that private message I had. I just won't put the name with it, but it's about Ingo Swann and penetration, which I read, which I loved back then. Ingo Swann was great when I first heard about remote viewing. He had his entire online book. I would read a chapter every couple of days. It was so good, and I think you could still find it online. It was posted somewhere else. Really in depth, his thoughts about remote viewing and how it all works. Remote viewing is nothing different from mediumship. The only difference is the morphic field. I don't know how it works or if there's a morphic field. I think Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphic fields. I think that's Sheldrake. I don't know if they're the same thing. They might very well be the same ability. I'm not convinced that mediums are talking to the dead. They might be. I just don't know how you prove that. Remote viewing. I know the big thing as well. If you can't figure out how it works and give us the scientific explanation for how it works, we don't want to hear it. Well, if you can come up with data via your sixth sense, beyond chance, I think it's something that should be taken seriously. I have no doubt remote viewing works because I took the class with Lynn Buchanan and Prudence Calabrese, and I got stuff that I shouldn't have got. Nothing amazing. I'm not a great remote viewer. But there are people that have a great sessions and they come up with information. This is mind blowing. Yeah, he's there. I've communicated with him. That 2019 case, I think, is going to be, I wouldn't say better than the Tic Tac, but it's 2019 versus 2004. So he has said he has spoken to people on the ship. So hopefully we hear from them. We get to see them speaking about what they experienced. Then, I know people don't like Jeremy, so they're like, I don't like Jeremy, and I don't believe the 2019 events. Listen, whether you like him or not, that's irrelevant to the 2019 events. They were able to access, and I need to pull up all the information and put it together. The classified report, I think they were either told about it or they looked at it. I'm not positive. I forgot exactly what that is, but the information they're sharing is from those reports. Now, it's going to be a lot different. People won't be able to take shots at Jeremy and say, I don't believe him if these guys come out and speak on camera. So that's what we need. Hopefully, we'll get that in this year. Crap must sleep. Have a good night, Peter. Thank you again. And I got to look up translate your message from earlier. Thanks for being here. Are you able to hint at what might be coming this week? Nope, 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 nope. Not a blockbuster thing. Just interesting that um let's see. Just more information. Just more information. I don't want to say anything, not my place. But it's not going to be just this week. It's going to continue throughout the year and the next couple of years. As an example, skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Nobody knew that was coming. I mean, I got a heads up on the book, but before I was told and before I was given the heads up, I had no idea that book was coming out. Um, Stuff like that. I know some people like haven't even read it. They don't want to read it, which is beyond me. It's one of my favorite UFO books in a long time. We get to see an inside look of how that program came together. Um, Stuff like that. So, and then, Jim Semivan was on Coast to Coast the other day. That was something I wasn't expecting. Things like that. It's not like it's not this mind blowing thing that's supposed to happen this week. It's just more information. That's it. More information. For me, I want to know as much as possible about everything. If more information about the Tic Tac came out, great. Of course, we all want more than 3 videos. We've been debating. It gets really old debating. Amazing. This community has debated 3 videos for 4 years until Corbell's videos came out, and then those were debated. But the government videos taken from the F-18s, the FLIR videos, we were able to take 4 years and debate that stuff. And hopefully we'll get something new from a FLIR, from an F-18. Yeah, and I want to see more from 2019. I don't think there are any F-18 FLIR videos, but you never know. I have not heard anything about that. So 2019, yes, please, please, that would be amazing. I think the people who keep saying it's drones would have to finally admit that it's not drones. I don't know what it is. I mean, I can't say 100%. I would never say 100%. It's not drones. I'm telling you what I've heard is 100%. The folks I hear from are like, no, these things did things that we don't have the technology for. It's not anything we know about. So it's a true unknown. So, and as Corbell has said, it's some of the higher ups too, that the higher upper brass, they don't know what that stuff is. So exciting to hear more about that case. And we'll hear more from Jeremy and George. And they've both vetted it. George has been at this for a long time. And Jeremy has said it. He goes, there's people are just hoping he messes up. They were just hoping. So he's extra careful when he puts the information out. He knows that. So yeah, Jeremy's been really open. So exactly, you don't have to believe or disbelieve. Exactly, just he's reading from the reports. He's not making stuff up, and some of it's just put right there in black and white. So you can say that the people who were giving the information to him, they fed him bogus information, or they were fooled. The folks in the UAP task force don't know what they're doing. The Navy folks don't know what they're doing. The upper brass who say these are UAP, they don't know what they're doing. You can say all that, but to go after Corbell because you don't like him, it's just, to me, it's just, I don't understand it. It's like me anymore on Lou's book. No, the last he said was he's working on it and it's hard work. And so that is a book I will I cannot wait to read that book. I hope it's even, I don't have like these, I don't think he's going to talk about crash retrievals or bodies or anything like that. I want to see an insider's look about what happened, because I'm sure there's stuff that we don't know about, and he has said that. And there maybe more names can come out. He's mentioned some bigger names that we would be familiar with that, played a role in ATIP. And I want to know more about the whole transition from OSAP to ATIP. I would like to know more about that. And maybe he can describe some of the books. not books, videos that they've seen. That's one of the things I have a pet peeve with. Somebody like Martin Heinrich, why can't he say, all right, guys, I can't tell you, I can't show you the videos that I was shown, but I can tell you what the objects did. Why is that classified? Why can't Martin Heinrich or anybody who went in one of those briefings tell us what the objects are doing on video? That doesn't give away sources and methods. I've made this argument before, and it's really annoying. Um, I know it's it's just that's just the way it is. It's a classified briefing, and they can't talk about it. Well, they should be able to talk about it. I would love for Heinrich or somebody to push that. Say, I'm going to talk about what I saw because it doesn't give away sources and methods. I think a great strategy for Lou in his book would be to lay it out and let the officer filter out. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll put classified stuff in there, but remember, you have classified stuff and then you have sensitive stuff. That's, yeah. So there's a difference. I've gotten people have told me sensitive information. You can't share this, but it's obviously not classified since they're sharing it with me. So a lot of sensitive stuff has not been released. I want that. I want that stuff released too. But I'm sure Dopser will step in and say, you can't say this, you can't say that. I think Rick Dodi, somebody mentioned him earlier. He said a lot was taken out of his book. He says a lot was taken out of his book. I don't know when his book is supposed to come out. Could be an interesting read. Yeah, I would think he'd be careful. I wonder how long the Inspector General investigation is going to take, because that's another thing that could be some good news for us if they're like, all right, Lou, you can talk about this. We don't see any reason why they would pull your security clearance if you talk about this, even though they're threatening to pull your security clearance if you talk about this. We have decided you can talk about this. That's where really what I would love to see come from that, because Lou knows a lot more, and not all of it is classified. And people do get pissed off about that. They're like, well, if it's not classified, why doesn't he share it? Because it's sensitive. I don't like that sensitive stuff. It's like, if it's not classified, share it. People are not going to freak out. People don't even care. We have Jim Semivan talking about his abduction on Coast to Coast, going into more detail than he's gone, and nobody even bats an eye. Nobody in the media, mainstream media, wants to talk to him about it. I mean, come on. Where's the curiosity? Not one person in the mainstream media wants to talk to a former CIA guy who is sharp he's very sharp, Semivan. You can hear him talk about it. Anyway, there's truly no oversight for a lot of this info. Zodiac, private aerospace, getting advantages over other companies, and then they can't be classified. So he can put it in. And by the way, I would not waste your time on Zodiac. I don't want to talk about specifics because I was told not to, and it's not. Zodiac is kind of a red herring. I mean, yeah, it has a role in that whole story, but not really something to focus on. Let's see what. Then it can't be classified, so he can put it in the book. And if he does get classified, then Lou will know that Congress isn't being adequately informed and can feed the Dopser redactions to IG. Yeah, he may do that. I don't know. Hopefully that book is out by Christmas. That would be a nice Christmas gift. What are your thoughts on the plausibility of the hypothesis that these beings are already here, assimilated into human society, and controlling us from the inside? I'm open. I am open to that. I mean, I know there are people who believe that, and there are stories about that, and there are people who have allegedly encountered these beings who look just like us. Could be. You start getting into conspiracy world when you're saying they're controlling us from the inside. But if they can look like us, if they look like us, well, if they are controlling things from the inside, they're doing a pretty bad job of it, unless their goal is chaos. Not that not that the whole world is chaos, but as a whole, it's like there's definitely not harmony. So yeah, and that theory has been around for a while. Not something I bring up with anybody who's new to this and who asks me my theories about what's going on. It's really hard for people to believe that, especially, and if that did turn out to be true, people would freak out. Oh yeah, they're among us. They basically look like us, and you cannot tell the difference unless you look really close. Um, unless you have the glasses to see them, as the movie They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper. Lou's been quiet. He's done some interviews. He's going to be doing more interviews. I think he's just focusing on the book. He said that in his Coast to Coast interview. I need to. I'll try to get that transcript out, because if you missed Coast to Coast and you don't subscribe, then you have no access to it. So I have the Semivan and Lou interview done with hyperlinks, which take me a while, but it's hard for me to do a transcript without hyperlinks, because if they mention something and I think somebody might not know what they're talking about, I link to it. And there's a lot of stuff like that. When Dolan asked Luis about Zodiac, yeah, no comment. I think Lou knows what Zodiac is, but no comment. It's not the no comment you think. And I can't really talk about it, and MJ12 is another thing. I don't think there's an MJ12 group. There may be a group that does do what MJ12 supposedly did or does, but they're not called MJ12, which is semantics. MJ12 is something different. But I do think there are programs related to crash retrievals and bodies, biological stuff, and whatever else. I do believe that. And I say believe, I definitely don't know, but um, even if I say I believe, I still want to see it. I mean, I can't say 100%, obviously. You hear Eric Davis talk about it. You see Bernard Hayes talk about it. Kit Green has spoken about the core story, which I don't think Kit Green still believes that. And I don't have the core story memorized. A couple of groups came here a couple of times. One of them may have crashed. We have one of their vehicles. It's kind of the basic core story. But I do remember, of course, I transcribed the whole Zodiac thing in the Dolan interview. Don't focus on Zodiac. Unless I'm pretty sure I was not given bad information. But then you have the whole story about, I forget the cartoon. I forget the whole thing that Dolan talks about, that it's crash retrieval. Basically, names aside, I think there's a crash retrieval program, at least one program. And Corbell and Knapp and other people like Bernard Hayes have talked about other programs. It's in Valet's book, his fiction book that Giuliano Marankovich wrote an article about, where he talks, there's some things that mimic the Wilson Davis document. So it's almost like Valet wrote fiction, but he threw some of the details from Wilson Davis in there. That's a good point. We'll see. I don't think he's going to go that far. I think he'll play it by the books, but hopefully we'll be surprised. I think MJ12 was just a cover for basically the same thing. Yeah. I would just not use names. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, MJ12 like group. Yep. I think. And various UFO related programs, which I really hope I get to see, and we get to see before I die. Yeah, I hope so, Jeff. We'll see. Let's be pleasantly surprised. And I'd be paranoid just writing the book. I mean, it's like when Lukatsky said they had to send the book a certain way. You had to protect the book when you send it to Dopser, because they have to assume there might be classified material in the book. So if you're going to send it to the folks at Dopser, you have to do it a certain way so nobody can breach your email or however they sent the book. So yeah, I'd be paranoid writing that book. Make sure you make a copy of it. Make sure it's safe somewhere besides your computer. Joe, have you read the Allagash abductions? I know about the Allagash abductions. I have not read it. Yes. And for me, abductions are a real thing. I don't know if it's the intelligence projecting those images into their minds. I don't know if it's physical. I know people have scars, so maybe it's a mixture of psychic, meaning it's projected into their minds. It's not really happening physically, and also physical. I mean, for my favorite abduction case, because the way they portrayed it is in the Netflix show. What was it called? Unsolved Mysteries. The What the heck's the name of that area? But it's the best. It shows you that they picked up people, went one by one by one, and you guys will remember what it was called. But it was recently last year. It was Unsolved Mysteries, the something. It's a certain area of Massachusetts, that northeast area. What book would I recommend for someone to read on this or related subjects if you could only recommend one? Um, Depends on if you want to get into the history. I have not read it yet, but I've heard so many great things about it. I don't even know the name of the book. It's in my Kindle, which I don't think I have up right now. I might. I don't have it. I'm trying to think of one book. The fact that Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which is one of my favorite books, talks about the connection between UFOs and the other related subjects like paranormal. For me, that's such an important step that we're taking. I didn't realize there was that a connection like that until I saw Eric Davis mentioned. He said all UFO sightings are accompanied by poltergeist or accompanied by poltergeist. I think what he meant all close encounters, because people who have close encounters, it seems like it always happens. Poltergeist activity comes. The folks who went to Skinwalker took stuff home with them, so that seems to happen. Um, George Knapp is under the impression he believes that some of the pilots, it might have happened with them. It spreads, it spreads to people, it spreads to neighbors, it spreads to people in the family. So yeah, that's important for me. It's not just about UFOs. So that's a great place to start, I think. Um, but it's not your like historical UFO book. Ross Coulthart's book, In Plain Sight, is a great book for history. I'm trying to think. Leslie Kane's book. I mean, it's a little outdated now, but the information is still good. I'm trying to think. I have to think about it. Richard Dolan's books, two massive books on the history of ufology, but that's just history, sighting after sighting, and it's good to see government documents. Um, as far as you start off with a documentary, The Phenomenon by James Fox is great. Ross Coulthart's documentary is really good. Lou said he's working on a documentary that's going to be the documentary to end all documentaries on UFOs. So I'll look forward to that too. I love me a good documentary. And then we have Charlie Parrish, who's working on a abduction documentary. And I'm sure it's going to be very theatrical, very cinematic, because most of the regular ones are not. They're more like very cut and dry. So I would expect more of a movie style cinematic, which I love. So some of the documentaries on Netflix are like that. Shot really well, edited really well. Luis always plays by the rules. He's a pretty savvy guy, and between him and Mellon, I'm sure they can use those rules to their advantage and accomplish their objectives. It's all going to be about Congress. There's only so much Lou and Mellon can do. Congress needs to stay on the Pentagon and make sure we get, number one, we get funding. That's a big thing. We don't know what funding that office is getting. Number two, they go out and investigate cases as they're happening, and they basically do what OSEP did, with the human effects. That's a big part of it. And if they do that, they'll come across cases where people have the hitchhiker stuff. It's going to happen. So what are you going to do? Ignore it? So that's why it's really important for our members of Congress to stay on this. I just want the tech to be real, whether we can understand it or not. The fact that it exists would just be incredible on its own. Maybe the technology that was crashed or whatever is really nothing that can be reverse engineered, and maybe that's why we've not been able to reverse engineer it. It might be like another one of those trickster type things. I don't know. I mean, you listen to Will Miller, and we have been able to back engineer stuff, and Eric Davis says the opposite. So no, we have not been able to back engineer. It's been a dead end. that's been a failure because we can't understand it. So if it is a failure and we've not been able to understand anything, like I said, maybe the possibility that it's something that we'll never be able to figure out. But, I don't know, hopefully people like Eric Davis, if we do get access to that program, he gets to see that stuff and gets to work on it. And then eventually we get to see it. Can you talk about the new UFO movie that's coming in July? Nope. Yeah, I saw the preview. That's all I know about it. Preview looks good. That last scene where that was like a teenager who was sucked into the sky. So, um, seems like it's gonna be one of those weird, scary movies. I mean, I'm definitely gonna see it. I'm not sure if it's gonna be based on any real cases or any, you know, try to stick to what the evidence shows as far as what real cases are. It might just be more of a Hollywoodish look, but I can't wait. Communion, I'm not sure if Communion is a great starter book. I mean, it was for me, the first book I read scared the crap out of me. I mean, and that, and because people now say, Joe, you need to look at the metaphysics. Well, I first got my start in metaphysics, and then some guy on Twitter was starting to talk really in depth metaphysics. But no, I do not know really in depth metaphysics. And he was a psychologist and he was talking over my head. I'm like, no, I don't know that stuff. I know the basics. I was part of a metaphysical church. I got married by a metaphysical minister. I took psychic development classes. I took Course in Miracles classes. I mean, I was really into it. And then I was like, you know what? I think a lot of this stuff is crap. I don't reject it, but a lot of it is, especially the channel stuff, though. A lot of that stuff, my God, so many bad predictions was ridiculous. The Berkshires, thank you, John. Yes, the Berkshires case is just amazing. There's more information if you go on YouTube. Those folks have spoken out. There's more details about their cases and other encounters that they had, personal experiences. Thank you, Zuri. Yes, folks, if you've not seen the Unsolved Mysteries Berkshires, it's shot incredibly well. I mean, for me, I work in television, but it just looks so good. Really well done. The witnesses are so solid. Definitely a must watch. I sent it to my sister, who's not really interested in it. I think all she said was interesting. Lou and Chris would probably want to provide top cover to Congress to be able to talk about the subject publicly without ridicule. So public engagement via something like Lou's book would be critical to accomplishing that. Lou has talked about this, the 5 pillars. Yeah, that's why Mellon said he focused on flight safety and national security, which gave them reasons and cover to speak out. Rubio, even though Rubio's gone a little further in some of his interviews, he can speak about UFOs and say, this is a flight safety issue. This is a national security issue. We have objects that we don't know where they come from, and they're going into restricted military airspace, and we don't know what they are. How could we not look into that? So that gave them cover, and it was a great strategy by Mellon to do that. According to Ryan Bledsoe, Jordan Peele, the director, wanted to do a movie on the Bledsoe story. So maybe Peele has a pre-existing interest in the topic, if that's true. Yeah, I had not heard that. I hope it's based on some real cases. And it is that the same director that did Get Out? Because it feels like that. There was another, I think, not Get Out. Yeah, Get Out, I think. There was a couple of movies that he's done. I'm not sure if that's the same guy. What do you think about Operation Trojan Horse? I think Operation Trojan Horse, thank you, Gabby. For people who are just getting into this, it might be a bit much, but it goes over the history. And John Keel, who also wrote Mothman Prophecies and a lot of other books, Operation Trojan Horse was a really it's a great call. It is a must-read book. There's so much information in that, going back to the beginning, the old days, the 40s, 50s, and his theories. He's one of the first that was talking about, well, it's not him, but there were other people in the 50s that were talking about paraphysical. This is not some extraterrestrial intelligence. It's something, in the non-physical realm. It can create things, it can manifest things. Just in 1970, it was published, written and published in 1970. So, yeah, great book, Operation Trojan Horse. I'll put the link in the comments. A lot of people use my Amazon links to buy books, which it helps. It's not a lot of money, but it helps. It adds up. Um, as most people know, I'm trying to do this full time. I'm not there, not even close, but I could see in a future where that could happen, especially if more and more people get into this, which hopefully will continue to happen. I have like 15,200 followers on Twitter. When I did my newsletter, the most I ever had was 800. So that's mind blowing to me. A guy like me has 15,000 followers, and I don't really say anything fancy schmancy. I don't make any predictions, so it's nice to see that people are willing to listen to information that's not sensationalistic. I try to keep it conservative, but I mean, you've seen some of my tweets. I'm not. I talk about an intelligence that might be using human beings as, for our negative energy and feeding off of that energy. I got so much flack from some people from just talking about that, but there are a lot of people that have. DeLong has spoken about it. The lightning rod David Icke has spoken about it. What's his name? It was a long time ago. I forget his name. He was shoot. Knapp and Kelleher spoke about it as a possibility. This intelligence gets a reaction and then it feeds off the fear. And then you have that guy's, I forget his name. I'm drawing a blank. His name is Paul Eno. Talks about that. That's his theory. These parasites, they feed off of anything negative in our lives. They love that stuff. And if that's the case, just for example, for argument's sake, yeah, there's some parasites that feed off of negative energy. It doesn't mean they're evil demons. It just means that's just what it is. That they need that to survive. So, we do things to survive that certain people would shake their heads at. What, you kill all of those cattle to survive and eat their meat? Well, yeah, it's like not evil. We don't consider that evil. Get Out and Us. Yes, those are the two movies. So I'm looking forward to that. I have not spoken. See, Gabby, you could be my producer. I'm sure you have spoken about this, but what did you think of Linda Moulton Howe's interview with the guy from Kurt Jamangle from Theories of Everything? Real quick, I thought that it was fine, especially when she's talking about her early days and cattle mutilations, which she did a Strange Harvest documentary, and that stuff was great. She spoke about her HBO documentary, what happened, and how when she went to meet with Dodi, how that kind of was the end of the documentary and they wanted more evidence from her. And then Kurt asked her, what do you think about people who say that you haven't vetted your guest as much over the years? From the beginning, you've changed by how much you vetted. And she reacted really bad. And I agree with that. I mean, yeah. Over the years, I just think a lot of her stuff, I'll listen to some of her witnesses and they don't sound credible to me. So yeah, she was defensive, which I understand. I mean, she's 80 years old. It's amazing how much energy she still has. But the other question I thought was not necessary, because he said that there was a picture that she put up on her website, and I think she was charging for it. It turned out to be from some video game. And she's like, what? And I don't know if she didn't know what he was talking about or she was just playing dumb, but she's like, what picture? And he did not have the picture to show her. So it's like, you need to be able to at least show her. So it was definitely uncomfortable. I think there was like 20-second pause there where Kurt was just silent. And I think he might've been looking at questions, but it was the longest pause I've ever seen in an interview. It was really uncomfortable, but yeah. Overall, I enjoyed it, but definitely cringeworthy at the end. Thanks, Troy. Yeah, I know people love transcriptions. Some people don't care because they rather listen. I would rather not be known as the transcriber. That's why I'm doing more YouTube stuff, because I love to give my opinion, even though it's mostly speculation. I mean, most of ufology is speculation. We don't know what the hell's going on. I'm gonna call it a night. This is a good first step getting back on. 23 people. It's not bad for 11 o'clock on the West Coast. People seem to have a difficult time distinguishing when someone is just relaying information and when they are claiming it to be true. That is a really good point. Yeah, if I share information, people will sometimes get on my case, and I'm like, listen, just because I shared it doesn't mean I believe this is the case. Although, if I'm sharing it, I probably find it interesting enough to share. So I usually every couple of days I'll say, make sure I don't know what's going on. I do not know. I have one time I had somebody, quote unquote, source give me an idea of what was going on. It was the zoo theory. ETs, interdimensionals, time travelers, all that stuff. But then there's somebody else who has access to data telling me, we don't know. We don't know if it's one intelligence or multiple. It's really hard. It's contradictory information. So don't know. Both sources are really smart people. All those folks, anybody who I speak to, they're all smart people, really intelligent, really deep thinkers. One of the biggest issues in this community is one of ego. Everybody wants to be the first to call bullshit because they don't want to feel stupid in case the info ends up being wrong. There's more there. The fear of, I don't see it, but yeah, the thing today I called BS on because there's just a person claiming to know what was going on and giving dates. It's like, no, you give dates, you're going to be wrong 99.9% of the time. And I think, I'm trying to think, I was thinking earlier why I react that way to certain things. And maybe it's like, because people are saying this is how it is. Maybe I flash back to my earlier years when I was younger and I had religion pushed down my throat. This is how it is. So maybe that's part of why I react negatively. I just don't like people telling me this is how it is. Sorry. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm really not going to engage with somebody like that. If somebody says, you know what, I think this might be going on like this, then that's fine. But I don't react well when they say, this is it. I know this. I know this. I know this. Easy to read transcriptions when I'm at work. Yes, I know some people it's good. And you're welcome, Troy. And I also need to put this on a blog. I mean, I need to put this on a podcast. I think there's a free one out there where I could put these into audio because I know some people said put it into audio and then I could listen to it. And I have not done it. And I apologize. I was gone for such a long time from here, but I just need to do it. And then once I do these live streams, I could just transfer it over to a podcast. So if somebody's driving, it's easier to listen to than, I know YouTube, unless you pay for the premium, YouTube will shut off a lot of the times. It's easier if somebody has an audio file on one of those podcast channels or sites. Oh, the fear of being taken for a ride. Oh, and being gullible. I'm not yeah, it's like for me, I just think it's if people are putting out information that seems just so out there and it's just, I mean, a lot of stuff I put out that there are people that think it's out there. I'm definitely not afraid of being wrong. Um, I have no problem with theories. It's just that when people are so sure of themselves, that's where I just react. I react negatively. Thanks, Gabby. I will make sure. Right now I have no work scheduled and I have to change that. So there will be times where I'm just not going to be able to do this. But yeah, I'm glad I came and did this tonight. I was gonna tweet and say, you know what, guys, I don't feel up to it. I'm like, no, gotta do it. Gotta get back. Gotta start doing it again. So I'm glad you guys could be here. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for the questions, everybody. It was good because I don't have a ton of stuff prepared. And I will do these more often. One more thing. I think I said that. Yeah. Marik from The Hill, great articles he's written for The Hill. He's also says he doesn't think Roswell was a cover up because there's too many people would have to be involved in the cover up. I don't agree with him. But, until we actually see the craft, we're not going to know for sure. Lots of great interviews lately. Gary Nolan, Lex Friedman. I still haven't listened to all of it. But anyway, all right, I'm going to go. Thanks, guys. I will talk to you soon. It's not going to be another month and a half before I do a live stream. Have a great night.